This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview as we take a look at the morning newspapers. First, though, our top stories this evening. MPs have voted to take the first step in Parliament towards leaving the EU, giving the go-ahead to the bill to trigger Article 50. Two more Labour MPs, though, quit the shadow cabinet over Jeremy Corbyn's demand that they vote in favour of the bill. And President Trump's national security advisor has said the administration is putting Iran on notice after it tested a ballistic missile. Hello there, you're watching Sky News and the press preview. In the next half hour, we'll be seeing what makes the headlines with the editors of the Times literary supplement, Stig Abell, and the documentary maker and journalist Jenny Kleeman. Welcome to both of you, good to see you. To the front pages then, the Metro to start with declares Brexit begins after MPs voted overwhelmingly in favour of a bill granting consent to leave the EU. The Financial Times warns the looming exit negotiations could descend into a diplomatic fistfight with remaining EU members over money. The Eye says Britain is stepping into the unknown and also suggests securing a settlement with Brussels could be a bitter process. The Times reports that Theresa May is facing a revolt over Brexit unless the Prime Minister guarantees the rights of EU citizens to stay in Britain. While the Express says Britain took a giant leap towards freedom by giving Theresa May the power to trigger Article 50. A sentiment continued in the Daily Mail, proclaiming that we have liftoff. It says, though, that 114 MPs betrayed the will of the people by voting against the bill. The Daily Telegraph, meanwhile, leads with an apology from the Archbishop of Canterbury after links between him and an alleged child abuser emerged. The Guardian covers Donald Trump putting Iran on notice in reaction to an Iranian missile test back on Sunday and an attack on a Saudi warship. That's on the right-hand column. They're also, though, going with Labour in disarray after that Brexit vote. Daily Star's front page has a story on two celebrity Big Brother contestants having fun at a party, by the look of it. Anyway, Stig, it's
lovely.
Clearly very important news. Stig Abell, Jenny Kleeman here, and plenty of papers to choose from in terms of this one. Not least this rather nice take on the UK gradually moving away from Europe.
Yes, it is finally happening, although it feels like it's been finally happening for a long time. But this is where it all begins. None of it is a surprise. The debate, the vote was symbolic more than anything else. I think it's a good thing that it was debated in the House of Commons. I think it's a good thing that we've done it all legally and correctly. But, you know, none of this is earth-shattering, really.
And it's interesting that Labour is one of those parties that pushed for a debate, and all it has done is send it into some levels of disarray, it seems.
And I think that when that debate was initially canvassed, the idea would be a moment in which changes could happen. There would be some way to amend. But the bill
there are still, I mean, it's still going through, isn't it? It's not the end of it.
There's another week, we've got to go to the House of Lords and all of that. But ultimately, the bill is so straightforward, really, is that we're going to have Brexit. There's going to be a white paper which will set out some broad terms. But effectively, we know now what we've always known, which is once you make this final decision, the decision has to happen. And one thing to do, probably, is for everyone, people who voted Remain, is to recognise this is going to happen. And that takes push and pull on both sides. Jenny and I were talking about this because you see with the Mail, the enemies of the people. And Nigel Farage has tweeted the same phrase. He's had 114 enemies of the people who'll have to pay at the ballot box in that sort of faux anger of his.
Well, not if they're in Remain areas, one might suggest.
No, and also he knows a lot about paying at the ballot box, what with never having been elected as an MP. But in any event, both sides kind of have to have a rapprochement here, which is to say, don't call people who think remaining is a good idea enemies of the people or their MPs enemies of the people, because it's kind of facile, fatuous nonsense. But people who voted Remain have to accept we are going to do it. And actually, if all of our energies can be directed towards that happening, we're probably going to have that moment where we say enough chatter saying this might not be a good idea to leap into the unknown. Churchill, of course, the many ways the presiding figure behind the EU, because he called for the United States of Europe in 1946. He said the United States
so
of
is that ironic then? That?
No, they just don't know that he said that. Churchill symbolises sort of British bulldog spirit, but in 1946 he said he calls for a United States of Europe to learn the lessons of the Second World War, to band together for common humanity and a common cause, a common good, which of course in the end led to the European countries coming together. So he's the patron saint of the EU in some eyes, although people wouldn't accept that.
Daily Mail, second edition required.
Second edition, yeah. Put Nigel Farage's gurning face. So we are going to have to come together. So I'm going to say, let's be positive. a great day, finality, decision-making, clarity, a bad decision is better than no decision, and we're all going to have to get along. But both sides have got to give each other a bit of relief, and I don't think enemies of the people defying the will of the people is very helpful.
And just on that Labour point, Labour meltdown as 47 defy Corbyn. So his mini reshuffle will soon be underway, we're told. 2 shadow cabinet members quit to defy these orders that they had to formally vote for Brexit. Previously, we'd had the shadow Welsh secretary and a junior shadow minister as well. On the night, 10 junior frontbenchers, 3 whips who were supposed to enforce party discipline also voted against triggering Article 50.
It's not been good for Corbyn. And in fact, the funny thing is, if you look at the front of the Telegraph, it says 1 in 4 MPs have defied Corbyn, and the front of the Guardian, it says 1 in 5. I mean, the idea that Corbyn's authority is in tatters after this, I think, is perhaps a bit strong. Also because Corbyn never had a lot of control over the Parliamentary Labour Party anyway, and he's had many reshuffles of his opposition front bench. This is just the latest incarnation. But this is such a tough one for Labour, and he's in an unenviable position. You have UKIP explicitly saying that they are targeting Labour seats in the north of England. You have Labour trying to reconcile the fact that 70% of people who live in Labour constituencies voted to leave, whereas over 90% of Labour MPs voted to remain. There is this schism in Labour. There are 2 traditional groups of people who vote for Labour, the people who live in cities, who are, called the chattering metropolitan elite, and there are people who are working class people. This is an issue that they do not agree on, and you have to almost feel sorry for Corbyn. And I just don't understand why MPs just couldn't vote along with what their constituents. The people in their constituencies voted.
And why make this a 3-line whip? And a 3-line whip basically means you have to vote the way of your party, and the fact that the whips who are responsible for enforcing the 3-line whip, they are called whips for that reason, that's what they do, voted against their own 3-line whip, is kind of a symptom of the problems they've got. And we saw
because otherwise you get accusations from the Daily Mail that you're ignoring the will of the people.
Well, you can't. Well, the point is,
enemies of the state and the judges.
Corbyn doesn't have the authority to impose a 3-line whip like this, and perhaps he should have recognised that before he tried to impose it.
What it demonstrates is if you try and run 2 forms of democracy at once, you get this sort of problem. You either have representative democracy through Parliament, where MPs seek to come to a decision and then are judged every 5 years at the ballot box, or you have direct democracy through a referendum. And what we're seeing here is exactly what happens when 2 different forms of democracy, not designed to go together, do that. And it happened sadly for Labour, in Scotland, it helped destroy the Labour Party. In England, it is destroying the Labour Party. This form of direct democracy, what it reveals is that the heart of Labour is no longer a coherent, collectible thing. It is something that splits, as Jenny says, in different directions. He should have probably just made it a free vote and it would have got through.
But even if he had made it a free vote, then he would have come under so much criticism of not being an enemy of the people, not accepting the will of the people, among the very groups of people that he's supposed to be, holding on to support for. He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
It's quite low down for the Mirror, isn't it, who's gone on homeschooling, but breakfast... is it going to be fast, or who knows?
It's not going to be fast. Of all the things it's going to be, fast is not
You don't like this headline?
I don't think it's a very good headline. Do you think it breaks fast?
Well, it's hard to say.
He's never been a fan of the Mirror, though.
No, but I do think what's interesting is with the Mirror, and you see, the Star, the Sun, not splashing on it, the Telegraph not splashing on it.
Have we moved on? Has the Ferrari gone?
I think what we're beginning to see, as Churchill would say, it's the end of the beginning.
Yes.
On this, where actually we can get to the point where we can say it's happening, and then there's lots of process, which I imagine a lot of people won't be that interested in, except as it reaches a decision point.
Well, let's do that not very interesting bit now. So Ivan Rogers speaking in the FT about the difficulty of that process, and he, of course, met many other EU diplomats who are suggesting that obviously for them the most important bit is preserving the union and not a trade deal with the UK in whatever shape or form it comes.
And it goes to show that for both sides the priority is not what's in each party's financial interests. It's a political thing for both sides. So the EU wants to preserve the union at all costs and not allow contagion, and the UK wants control of its borders. And so, the UK is probably going to have to pay a price for it, and people knew that when they voted for it.
The EU also wants 60 billion quid, which it says that we owe for sort of outstanding.
See, that's fascinating. And that includes pension contributions.
Pension contributions for 40 years of officials.
Really?
So it's officials who've been working in Europe for that long.
That's really going to make everybody really...
It is, but when we sign various deals, the idea is that you carry on paying, and if you pull out of your mortgage early, you don't just get a chance to walk away and say, OK, I'm not paying anymore, thanks, bye, guys. They say, well, hang on, you've signed 25
how many people see the EU, which is bureaucratic, overstaffed, under-elected and all that.
And these things will all be chips to be played in the negotiation. But the process, at least, will get some clarity at some point. And either Theresa May will lead us to a proud victory that makes us a more nimble, successful country, or it'll be a disaster, in which case we can blame her.
Even it is in the mid-2020s, which is the suggestion.
Exactly, yeah.
We'll have final thought on this section with The Express, which has campaigned for it. Now we're on our way out of the EU. I feel a song coming on at that moment, but anyway.
Are you going to start singing?
No, I absolutely am not. To Donald Trump now, another fascinating 24 hours. Iran in their sights.
I mean, what's fascinating about Donald Trump is he is effectively, deliberately going past ideas of protocol and diplomacy, and diplomacy is very much bound up with protocol. And so we've seen this throughout, signing an executive order about banning 7 Muslim countries without really thinking through the consequences. It's all about the action, it's all about the rhetoric. And we've seen now Michael Flynn on his behalf saying Iran is put on notice for its behaviour in testing a missile. It is not at all clear what put on notice means. No. It either means if you do it again, we will do something very serious to you, or it means we're telling you off, or it just means the sort of talk that Trump is very fond of.
It means we're watching you.
Yeah.
We're watching you.
No, they then said they hope it means that Iran will change its behaviour and decline to comment on whether this meant the threat of military action.
Yeah, but either, if you put someone on notice, that means if you do it again, we are putting you on notice that we will do something. And probably one would hope they have in their own mind, they don't have to tell us, do they know in their own mind what they mean that action will be? The answer to that is almost certainly no.
And some suggested they fired that ballistic missile anyway after the travel ban on those 7 mainly Muslim countries, including Iran.
Yeah, I mean, diplomacy is going to be a fascinating process in the Trump era, to put it in the most polite terms you can possibly put it.
I think the problem is we've learned with Donald Trump is that he does do what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
And this can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways, but we can't just assume that this is him being volatile and this is rhetoric, because he does tend to follow through on things.
And meanwhile, he left the White House tonight for I think the second time. The first time was for a family meal, getting on Marine One to pay tribute to what is thought to be the first casualty on his watch. But this time with his daughter Ivanka and not with his wife, who's still in New York looking after their 10-year-old son. So the great question is, will his daughter actually take the role of First Lady? But this is the showbiz side of this family,
this role as the first family, and they're trying to kind of give Ivanka much more of prominence. I think that is the plan, isn't it?
We have to accept in the end that the old verities, the old way of doing things, is changing, and you can waste a lot of energy on complaining about things that don't matter, like is it his daughter or is it his wife, and we should probably devote some energy to worrying about whether his action is actually going to cause serious problems or not. But everything that's been done the way it's been done before is gone. He is, rightly or wrongly, for better or for worse, tearing up decades of protocol and the way of doing things that we're used to. Now, maybe that will turn out okay.
And threatening to press the nuclear option on the Supreme Court, which is changing the rules, so there doesn't have to be, so he can be speedily
Let's not use the phrase pressing the nuclear option. It really frightens me.
Maybe we'll all die in a nuclear mushroom cloud caused by Donald Trump is certainly in play still.
Can I just go to the Express and just show a bit of normal weather, because that's all much nicer to take.
You're obsessed with
No, it's
weather,
just you're talking about nuclear mushroom clouds, and actually I just wanted to calm it down a bit.
With
showing a horrific storm.
With Storm Doris. You're right, didn't help at all. Anyway, Beyoncé is pregnant with twins.
Hooray!
Back with that in a moment. Kelly Tree. Welcome back to the press preview, taking a look through the newspapers, joined tonight by the editor of the Times Literary Supplement, Stig Abel, and the documentary maker and journalist Jenny Kleeman. Welcome back to you. So, to the Express and Jeremy Vine.
So, Jeremy Vine was involved in a road rage incident and he filmed it. He was
on a bike,
He was cycling home from work, and a woman in a car was angry that he was in front of her. I saw this. And the reason why I saw this footage that he filmed it from his helmet camera. And then he tweeted it. And then this woman got caught. And this woman was found guilty. And by all accounts, she's not a pillar of society. She has previous convictions, including assault, theft, shoplifting. She's currently under a suspended jail sentence. So she may go to jail for this road rage incident. She was very threatening to Jeremy Vine. She made a gun sign with her hand at him. She was altogether not very nice. However,
Right.
I wonder if this would have gone to court.
Jenny's really
in the
fired
same
up
way.
about this.
If it wasn't Jeremy Vine.
Jeremy Vine has like 600,000 Twitter followers, and he filmed all of this and put it out there. And if you have that much of an audience and you put a film like this
The
out,
police have to respond.
the police have to respond, and also things are very. I mean, apparently her lawyer said she'd been subject to racist abuse after all of this, and a lot of people would say, well, fair game, don't go around threatening people. But it does, it is an interesting complexion on justice here, that if you are someone with a massive following, you can really tip the scales from the outset in terms of how far police and the CPS are prepared to go with an incident like this.
I suspect it's been ever thus, though, in the sense that rich, powerful people always seem to get justice done more quickly.
But now they're making their own videos and broadcasting them
Yeah.
instantaneously.
It's not the first time someone with great influence has.
And he presents
Yeah.
Crime Watch as well, which kind of also makes a difference.
So there's a conflict of interest. Or maybe it's just.
Don't commit crimes against Jeremy Vine.
Yeah. Right.
Wait, there's a connected story.
There is. I'll go on to it. Thank you for that link.
That was a professional segue
Swearing
from me,
is
wasn't it?
not a criminal offence.
Says a judge. This is an
This
extraordinary.
is the front of the Sun as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's an extraordinary story in that this should never have possibly got to court. So there is a man who is defaulted on payments. He's gone bankrupt. He hasn't paid it. So the wife of the person who he owes money to calls him up, leaves a message on his phone calling him a pussy. And as a result, she's charged with a malicious communication because it was on an answer phone. Malicious communication. A lady calling a man that term, which is not the worst term in the world, a term used by presidents the world over.
Suggesting a weakling, though,
Yeah, well,
presumably,
yeah,
in that circumstance.
exactly.
No?
But
Or-
yeah, and even if it weren't, it's still not that striking a term. When someone sitting in the White House has used it on video when.
In a more derogatory fashion.
In a more derogatory fashion, and more gendered, I believe the term is fashion. In any event, how the hell this did? And then the judge, in fairness to him, asked exactly that question. He looks at the papers and says,
In the story here, you can see what the judge... Good heavens, the judge said. It's fairly standard behaviour in life. I'm concerned criminal law is properly used not to stop people swearing at each other. To call someone a pussy is impolite. It's not an offence.
and I think he's
End
right.
of case.
Yes.
And it gives her a conditional discharge. But
Yeah.
with all the problems in the world, all the stresses on our justice system, the stresses on our police system, for
Then
this to
why
go.
was that brought to court?
Yeah, it's
So-
like-
Yeah, he wasn't even
the
Jeremy
CPS
Vine.
and the police have a case to
It
answer.
reminded us of a case when an Oxford student
You-
called a policeman's horse gay. Do you remember that? And was nearly prosecuted for doing the
I
same
actually
thing.
don't, and we haven't got time to talk about that. So we don't want to talk about that one up there, which is blooming Beyonce is pregnant with
Beyonce
twins.
is having twins, and unlike most people who might, share a picture of the sonogram, she's appeared in a green veil and a bra cradling her belly. I guess she's Beyonce, she can announce the news however
It's a
she
weird
likes.
that's a weird picture,
It's
isn't it?
it's a strange picture, but congratulations to Beyonce and
I think at this
Jay-Z.
point we're supposed to say she looks absolutely beautiful.
Do you think she does?
Yeah, she looks all right.
Yeah.
I think she looks very strange. She is beautiful and she looks very strange.
And it's not a single baby. It's not a single baby. It's the
Okay,
joke that we
right.
have to make. as
Time to
well.
go. Good night.
Fine.
Stig and Jenny, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Made yourself laugh.
Well, someone's got to.